Hi, everybody. It is so good to have you back here on the Treasured Wellness Show. I have such an important and amazing guest for you today. Dr. Tom O'Brien is with me, and he is a functional medicine expert, best-selling author, and all-around incredible human, as you will find out. And I am just so excited to share him with you. Let me read his bio real quick. When it comes to getting healthy, Dr. Tom O'Brien's goal for you is to make it easy to do the right thing, which I love. And as an internationally recognized, admired, and compassionate speaker focusing on food sensitivities, environmental toxins, and the development of autoimmune diseases, Dr. Tom's audiences discover that it is through a clear understanding of how you got to where you are that you and your doctor can figure out what it will take to get you well. Oh my goodness, I love that. As a health coach who helps women in the midlife season to remove the overwhelm and keep things simple and doable, I absolutely love Dr. Tom's approach. And as I've learned from Dr. Tom for well over 10 years, and I do appreciate the unique way that he explains things really in layman's terms so that everyone can understand. So if you can't tell, I am beyond thrilled to have Dr. Tom O'Brien on the show. And if this is your first time hearing Dr. Tom speak, I know you will be glued to this interview. Dr. Tom, welcome. I'm so happy to chat with you today.
Thank you, Michelle. It's a pleasure to be with you, and thank you for that very kind introduction.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, every word. So let's just dive in. We have so much to talk about today. I believe that the body is brilliantly created and it knows what to do when we give it the proper tools and support. And most people nowadays are chronically inflamed. So I really want to dive into that inflammation situation that is creating a host of health issues. But I will say that I'm honestly a bit concerned about the word inflammation, that it's becoming another buzzword in the medical field. And it's just starting to lose its meaning, right, as it relates in health to the brain and the body. But the reality is it is a major factor as to why people are sick. So I know you talked, Dr. Tom, about a weak link in the chain of overall health. Would you explain what you mean by that and share how inflammation can cause symptoms like foggy thinking and extreme fatigue?
Sure. Do we have a weekend?
Right. That'll be next. We'll schedule that.
Next, yes. Yeah, if you pull a chain, the chain always breaks at the weakest link. Always. It's at one end, the middle, the other end. It's your heart, your brain, your liver, your kidneys. Wherever the weak link is, that's where the chain's going to break. Well, what determines the weak link? There are two things that determine the weak link. Your genetics, that's the deck of cards you were dealt in this lifetime. You've got the BRCA1 gene for breast cancer. That's a weak link in your chain. It doesn't mean you're getting breast cancer. It means you're vulnerable to breast cancer. Well, what do I do? Stop pulling on the chain so hard. Well, how do I do that? Well, that's the million-dollar question. And the answer is, what's pulling on the chain? And what's pulling on the chain every single time is inflammation. It's always inflammation, without exception. And can I share my screen and
Absolutely
show a few slides here? This is the presentation that I give. Let's see now. There we go, right there, that one. And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So this is my boss. He's my son. And I believe the only way that we're going to save the planet, we had just over 2 billion people on the planet in 1960. Now there's almost 8 billion. Now you think about that, and that's in 50, 60 years, we've increased the number of people on the planet, not double, not triple, but quadruple the number of people on the planet. And that's creating a lot of problems. And I believe the only way that we're going to solve these problems is by thinking outside the box that's creating the problems. But you and I are not going to think outside the box. Perhaps we will as individuals, but our politicians are not, businesses are not. They're all invested in their own self-interest, so it's not going to happen. How do you think outside the box? You raise a generation of children who think outside the box. That's the goal here, is to raise a generation of children who think for themselves. And I'm going to introduce to you a few concepts here in this hour, this next hour we have, that I'm hoping you're going to say, what? Wait, what? And that you're going to think about them. And then because as you said in the introduction, my goal is making it easy to do the right thing. Well, to make it easy to do the right thing, you have to know what the right thing is. Okay, well, what does that mean? It means that it has to make sense. You know, if you've got a map of New Delhi, let me see if I can stop sharing for a minute here. And do you still see my screen, or do you see me?
I see you now.
Okay, good. If you have a map of New Delhi, and you know, that's a difficult town to get around, really difficult town to get around, New Delhi. It's the one place in the world I will not drive. I'm born and raised in Detroit, so I grew up with muscle cars. I'm a good driver, but I won't drive in New Delhi. I mean, Rome, they drive on the sidewalks. That's okay. I can handle that. But New Delhi, I can't. I just won't. So when you've got a map of New Delhi, you're able to get around the trains, the buses, whatever you use. But you take that map of New Delhi that gives you guidance on exactly what to do, what's the right thing to do to get to where you want to go, and you go to New York, that map is useless. You need a map of New York. So the idea of shotgunning health ideas into people who are already not doing very well is really limited. You know, you need a map of your body. The rule is, in God we trust. All others require data. What does that mean? Test, don't guess. So your health practitioner has to learn how to do the right tests to identify, is this a problem for you? And if it is, okay, this is what's pulling on your chain. This is something that's pulling on your chain, right? So that's the goal. Now I'm going to go back to sharing screen again after my little thing about New Delhi. Let's see here. Let's go here and here. There we go. And so I'm hoping that some of the ideas you get here will you'll be at night thinking about something. Oh, wow, yeah, that's right. You know, as you're falling asleep or you're driving down the road and an idea, oh, I remember they said that in the podcast. Wow, that's really interesting. So that you dive in to some new ways of thinking. There's some things that you just need to learn that you don't currently know, or you wouldn't have the health issues you've got right now. So this is so brilliantly said. I mean, it's just so very true. And what's he talking about? A healthy human? What's that? Well, you know, we know lifespans have been increasing globally, but in the last number of years, that's not true. Children born today have a shorter expected lifespan than their parents. It's like, what?
That's so tragic.
If I have a new child, if I bring a child into the world, their expected life expectancy is less than mine? Yes. Yeah. Because there's so much disease now that people don't know how to identify. And there's a 20-year difference between life expectancy and healthy life expectancy. And we know with males, the average male lives to almost 79, but his healthy life expectancy is only to 62. That means that the last 16 years of his life is with disabilities, on medications, unable to walk up a hill, you know, whatever the disability should be. But the average is 21% of a man's life is with disabilities. My goal is that I'm not one in a wheelchair drooling in a nursing home. You know, I'm hoping that my healthy lifespan and my total lifespan are really close to each other. So that when my time comes, I just go to sleep and don't wake up,
Mm-hmm.
in the best of all worlds. Women live a little longer. The average age is almost 83, but 24% of their lives are with disabilities.
Mm.
So my understanding is your main audience is women coming into their middle ages. And if this is the perfect time to begin thinking about this stuff, because
Yes.
what you're going to learn here, yes, 1/5 of an individual's life is lived with morbidities. That means disabilities. And everybody says, okay, so what's the cause? What's the cause of inflammation? Where's it coming from? Well, I suggest there is no root cause. And when doctors say that, you got to be really careful, because I think they just bought a bag of thinking that's going to limit how they look at your health issue. There is no root cause. There are many causes, but there's one root mechanism in all chronic diseases, all of them. There's one mechanism. I call it the prime directive. And I grew up in this generation, so
Yeah.
you just don't mess with the prime directive. And what is the prime directive? The CDC tells us that 14 of the 15 top causes of death are chronic inflammatory diseases. It's always inflammation, unless it's an unintentional injury. Everything else, cancer, diabetes, liver disease, septicemia, high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline, brain fog, they're all inflammation pulling on the chain, and the chain breaks at the weakest link. That's how you get disease. Chronic inflammatory diseases are recognized as the most significant cause of death in the world today. And that's why I just spent the last year traveling to 7 countries, 64 interviews of the world's leading scientists. I'm not exaggerating. I interviewed all of the greats that I've read their papers, and I asked them the questions, and we put it together in a docuseries. It's a 9-part docuseries that's about 40 minutes a day for 9 days, and it's all free, called The Inflammation Equation. And when you watch The Inflammation Equation, you understand where the pull on the chain is coming from. You understand in your life, you can say, oh, wow. Well, yeah, if we go on vacation, when we come home, I have to open all the windows and air the house out. Now they're telling me that's mold in the house. I don't see any mold, but yeah, you've got mold if you have to air the house out. That's mold. And so you have to check to see, where's the inflammation coming from? Now, inflammation is produced by your immune system. It's the immune system's way of protecting you. Now, when your immune system determines a threat, they activate. You've got your immune system's just the armed forces in your body. It's the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, the Coast Guard. We call them IgA, IgG, IgE, IgM, cytokines. They're all different branches of the armed forces there to protect you. That's their job. So the $1 million question is, the immune system got this message, we're under attack, fight and defend. And the only way your body can protect itself is by creating inflammation to kill the bug that's trying to get in. That's the only way. Now, this drawing comes from David Furman at Stanford and at the Buck Institute. And he got the contract with NASA to figure out, why are the astronauts aging so quickly? Why? And he put this drawing together, which is brilliant, because everyone can understand this, but people dive into this and they can spend 8 years studying this and get a PhD in immunology trying to understand this. But the basic principle is that when you've got chronic infections, too many bugs or virus or bacteria, or you're not active, you're sitting all day, which is a disease state of being. Well, what do you mean? We've been sitting our whole lives. Yes, but your ancestors didn't. Your ancestors were moving all day, every day, which is what you're supposed to do. That's why the magic number is 9,826. That's the magic number. In the Journal of the American Medical Association, they followed over 80,000 people, and they found that those that walked 9,826 steps per day or more, 10,000 steps to round it out, they had a 51% reduction in dementia. It didn't matter if they had the ApoE4 gene for Alzheimer's. Didn't matter. If they walked 10,000 steps a day, because physical inactivity is one of the triggers of inflammation, turning the wheel on the left, or obesity, or too many bad guys in your gut, not enough good guys, called dysbiosis, or the foods that you're eating, or too much stress, and the stress hormones are causing these problems, creating inflammation, or you're not getting regenerative sleep, or you've got accumulations of too many toxic chemicals in your body, like petroleum byproducts or glyphosate or mold. Any of those things on the left side of this drawing turn the wheel, which turns the wheel in the middle, which is, okay, so this is for doctors, and I put every one of these cause oxidative stress. That's the inflammation inside the cell that occurs, which then creates systemic chronic inflammation. So that middle wheel gets turned. Now you've got chronic inflammation in your bloodstream, which turns the wheel on the right, which manifests as diabetes or cardiovascular disease or cancer or depression, autoimmune diseases, brain diseases, osteoporosis, immunosenescence. It doesn't matter. The mechanism is the same. The prime directive is that it's always chronic inflammation that causes the eventual disease. And in this paper by David Furman and his group, he tells us that there are 9 hallmarks of aging. And every single one of these hallmarks are linked by sustained chronic inflammation. And that's the different hallmarks that I teach doctors about, each one of them individually. We're not going to talk about that today, but my point is every single one of the markers of aging, which is what they figured out for the astronauts in space, every single one of those is caused by chronic, sustained, low-grade inflammation. Now, there's one more point I'm going to bring up, and then I'll stop. Alessio Fasano is a professor of medicine, professor of pediatrics at Harvard Medical School, a professor of nutrition at Harvard School of Public Health, the chief of pediatric gastroenterology at Mass General at Harvard, the director of mucosal immunology at Harvard, the director of the Celiac Research Center at Harvard. This guy has 5 titles. Any one title is a lifelong dream for someone at the top of their game. He's got 5. We think he's going to win the Nobel Prize. We truly do, because it was him and his team that have been, in 1997, they identified this thing, leaky gut. They identified how this thing happens and what to do about it. And he's published over 300 papers now on this topic of leaky gut. So you'll see a research paper, and there'll be 8 authors on the paper. And the last one, Alessio Fasano, the boss. You know, he put his stamp of approval on it. But this paper, he wrote himself, which tells you how important he thinks this topic is. And the title of the paper is All Disease Begins in the Leaky Gut. All disease, it doesn't matter. They begin in the leaky gut. That's why the gut is so important. If you're only going to do one thing, Mrs. Patient, you work on developing a healthy gut microbiome. That's the most powerful thing you can do. We recommend you do a lot more, but this is the most powerful. And Fasano tells us that the 2 most powerful triggers for creating a leaky gut are bad bacteria in your gut and gluten. Those are not dairy, not soy, not any other chemical, gluten. And I'll in the Q&A, we'll go through the why of that. Where is all that coming from? But with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and we're going to go back to Q&A now. But this concept is just so important to understand, is as to where all of this comes from. And it comes from inflammation, and there are so many triggers that can cause the pull on the chain that manifests as recurrent bladder infections or manifests as recurrent miscarriages. You know, this is how I got into this. When I was an intern 45 years ago, my wife and I could not get pregnant. And I called the 7 most famous holistic doctors I'd ever heard of and asked what they do. They all gave me their ideas. You know what a category 1 is? No. Learn. Okay, category 1. And I put a program together, and we were pregnant in 6 weeks. My neighbors in married housing who had been through artificial insemination, nothing had worked. They asked if I'd work with them. And I said, well, I don't think it'll hurt you in any way. Okay. They were pregnant in 3 months. So we were hot to trot and telling the world, you know, we're now 4 months pregnant and just had another success. And people were coming to me. I was in school in Chicago and living in the dorm, married housing on campus. But people came to my dorm room and said, please help me. Please help me. We've had 3 miscarriages. Please help. My sister told me about you. And so I okay. But that's how I got into all of this. That's how it all started, was with recurrent miscarriages. You have to reduce the inflammation. And I'll give you an example, a study now on reducing the inflammation. In the Journal of the American Medical Association, they published a study in 2018. Every doctor should know this and memorize it because it's so important. But it got no press, absolutely no press, because there's no profit anywhere. There's no drug with this. But they looked at women going through infertility clinics. And they ruled out, now the editors of the journal, the American Medical Association, wrote an article or wrote a comment, and they said, this is an elegant study using sophisticated biomarkers to demonstrate their point. Now, the editors of the Journal of the American Medical Association don't say that very often. They don't say that. So that was, okay. I'll read with open eyes and open mind. Okay. So they ruled out all of the known factors that influence a negative result to implantation, artificial insemination. They ruled out alcohol and cigarettes and exercise, no exercise, drugs, pharmaceuticals, socioeconomic class, race. They ruled out all that out in an elegant way, and they looked at one thing. How many servings of fruits and vegetables is the woman eating per day while she's going through the implantation process? How many servings per day? And they divided the women into quartiles, the lowest number of servings per day, the next, the third, and the highest. And the results were shocking, completely shocking. Women in the highest quartile of fruit and vegetable consumption per day, compared to women in the lowest quartile, women in the highest quartile had an 18% less likelihood of successful implantation. Less likelihood. And if they did have a positive implantation, they had a 26% less likelihood of a live birth. They lost a baby more often to miscarriages. Wait, what? What did you just say? Like the picture of the man laying in bed, like, what? And I hope you dive into this on your own when this interview is over. You know, that cute little drawing I gave you, the woman diving in to the stars. You need to dive into this. What? Yes, less likelihood. But here's the good news. There was a group of women that the researchers didn't know about until after they started the study that were eating organic. And in that category, the results were the exact opposite. Complete opposite. The more fruits and vegetables you ate organic, the better the outcome. And this is the really good news. Women in the category of organic fruit and vegetable consumption were put in that category, and they got the much better results if they ate 3 servings per week, not 3 servings a day. It didn't take very much. Now, the authors of this elegant study didn't address that concept. But I think I know why it only took 3 servings a week. Because if you're eating organic whenever you can, you probably have organic shampoo in your bathroom, and you've got organic soap in the kitchen sink, and you've got organic dishwashing detergent. You're doing the little things every day, and it really is, every time I sign a book, it's the same way. I ask them their name, and then I write their name, and base hits win the ball game. Tom O'Brien. It's the little things you do every single day that accumulatively reduce the pull on the chain. So your weak link, wherever it is, and remember the prime directive, it doesn't matter where it is, wherever it is, you're reducing the pull on the chain, and then you extend the healthy lifespan closer to your total lifespan. That's the goal. And this is the map that you follow for your body. You find out what are the triggers of inflammation in my body. And when you find that out, you say, really? I've got this high a level of phthalates in my body? And then you start to study phthalates, and you read my book, and you learn that when you store leftover food in plastic containers in the refrigerator, the next day, the food has these chemicals in it from the plastic that are called endocrine disruptors, hormone disruptors. They're in the chicken. They're in the leftover spaghetti now, or plastic water bottles. A study came out 8 months ago, I think, about 8 months ago, where they developed a new technology, a laser technology, to measure plastic particles in bottles of water, in the water. And most of us have heard of microplastics, that the plastics in the ocean are breaking down, and microplastics are in the fish and all that. But this new laser technology can identify nanoplastics. Really, really, nano is a millionth of a gram. And what they found, they went to the store and they bought 3 different famous waters, popular bottles of water, 3 liters of water, 3 different companies, and the average was over 240,000 nanoparticles in a liter of water. 240,000. Now, these nanoparticles, when you drink the water, you don't need a leaky gut. They go right through the gut into the bloodstream. And then they're in the bloodstream, and they go right through the cheesecloth that's around your brain, called the blood-brain barrier. They go right into the brain, and then your immune system in the brain gets activated, trying to protect you from an invader. And now here comes the inflammation in the brain, because there's an invader here, and the inflammation comes, and now there's collateral damage because the invaders are coming constant 24/7 into the brain. So your immune system is constantly trying to fight these invaders in the brain. Here comes your brain inflammation. Here comes brain fog. Here comes seizures. Here comes depression. Here comes anxiety. Here comes schizophrenia. Just go on Google and type in schizophrenia and gluten. Here come the studies on the inflammation from gluten. When you go on a gluten-free diet, many schizophrenics get better. Not every single one of them, but many of them do. So you have to get the map of your body, and you see, wow, I've got phthalates in my body, and I've got lead, or I've got arsenic, and I've got mold metabolites in my body, and I'm sensitive to wheat and to soy. Oh my God, I didn't know this. Wow, that explains why I've got brain fog once in a while. And it's going to take you 6 months to 2 years to clean this up. There is no magic pill that you can
No.
take and you're going to extend your healthy lifespan. That's utter nonsense and marketing bullshit. Excuse me. But they're taking people's money with false pretenses that you're going to be healthier. Yeah, you'll feel better for a little while, but the inflammation is still continuing. You just took 2 shots of espresso, so you feel good. You're not tired anymore. But that's what you did when you're taking nutrition and you're not dealing with the inflammation that's under the surface. It's the prime directive for all disease. 14 of the 15 top causes of death are chronic inflammatory diseases. Wake up. Excuse me, but we don't have time. We're killing the planet too quickly. You have to wake up to this. And don't believe me. Watch the inflammation equation. It's free. Just watch it. Listen to David Furman. Listen to Dale Bredesen, the godfather of Alzheimer's reversal, who's written a number of books already, and he's got hundreds of patients. Well, he's got hundreds of doctors trained in his methodology around the world and thousands of patients who have reduced their Alzheimer's. Card-carrying reduction, tests back normal again. And you'll see it again and again and again. And your regular doctors say, that's nonsense, that's impossible. No, it's not. You just never studied this stuff on how to stop pulling on the chain and calm down the inflammation in the brain. Dale Bredesen talks about this, and I'll stop after this example. But Dale talks about this, and he says, imagine an old factory. It's been abandoned for many years, and the windows have been kicked out, and there's gang graffiti on the walls inside, and there's 36 holes in the roof. So when it rains, there's puddles on the floor in there. It's just a mess. That's your brain with Alzheimer's. That's your brain. How are we ever going to think that? How can you possibly think there's a pill you're going to take that's going to fix that? That's utter nonsense. You've got 36 holes in the roof that have to be fixed. You have to check for gluten sensitive. You have to check for elevated homocysteine. You have to check for heavy metals. You have to look at your omega-3s versus your omega-6s. There's a whole bunch of things you have to do to patch the holes in the roof to get your brain working right again. But it's by finding out how you got to where you are that you and your doctor can figure out how do you get back to a healthier way of living and increasing your healthy lifespan closer to your total lifespan.
Agreed. And optimal health should be the goal, right? Because in your slide, you don't want to get to retirement age, right? You retire. What happens to most Americans when they retire? Then they spend the rest of their life.
They buy a lazy boy. They buy a lazy boy.
Right. And this is where like the dis-ease has by then turned into disease. And there's so many different areas I could go from everything.
Look, here's an example. I work at my computer every day, and in the morning when I make our morning coffee, I also make my pot of green tea, which sits here all day long. Because you read the studies, and I just sip all day long. There you go. Because when you read the studies, you drink 2 cups of green tea a day, you reduce your risk of cardiovascular death by over 20%. You drink 4 cups a day, you reduce your risk of death from cardiovascular disease over 50%. And they looked at over 70,000 people for this study. It's like, oh my God. So you learn about it, you try green tea and say, I don't really like that. All right, try a different type. There are many types of green tea. I personally like jasmine. I don't like.
I was going to say that. That's my favorite, jasmine.
Yeah. So you just learn these little things and you start including them in your lifestyle. You go back to my book, You Can Fix Your Brain. And there's 36 different things to do. For example, when you go back and you say, oh yeah, those plastic storage containers. I give you 3 URLs for glass storage containers. Miles Kimball, Amazon, and whatever the third one is, I don't remember. And you go online and look at those, say, those are, and I like those. And you order 3 round ones and 2 square ones and 1 for the pie. You hit send, you pay through credit card. You're done. But never will you poison your family again with plastic storage containers. Give those to your husband to store nails in the garage. That's what
Right.
they're good for, right?
Right. Yeah,
And then
exactly.
you do the next little thing, and then you do the next little thing. And 6 months from now, you go to church and you see someone you haven't seen in a while. Wow, you look great. What happened to you? Well, I learned that nail polish, the phthalates from nail polish, get in your bloodstream in 4 or 5 minutes. So I found organic nail polish. That I don't have that anymore. And I got glass storage containers in the kitchen. And I found out that I had arsenic poisoning. So I learned how to cook rice, but get the arsenic out of it. And you and your friend just go, what? This
A little bit more than they asked for.
That's right. That's right. And you say to them, I didn't believe it at first, but within a couple of weeks, I started feeling better, and it's just been continually. And my husband's the same way. He's down 2 belt sizes, and we don't count calories. So once you understand, you need a map of the body, of your body, what's happening in your body, and that's what you base your choices on. Is your map. You don't need to do heavy metal toxicity detoxing if you don't have excessive heavy metals in your body. But you have to do the right test to see if you have excessive heavy metals, which many people do. And for women going through menopause, that time of life, the perimenopausal years, well, as your ovaries start to shut down, they're not making estrogen anymore. And as they're shutting down, it's the job of the adrenal glands to start kicking in and making about 1/10 the estrogen that your ovaries made. Not a lot, just a little bit, enough to keep your bones strong and your brain functioning well. But what happens, you've had a really stressful life and you wore out your adrenal glands. You have to learn about hypoadrenia and what that means. So the adrenals can't do the job. So now you have estrogen deficiencies and you get osteoporosis within a few years, or you get a higher risk of heart attacks, within a few years. And women's risk of heart attack is much, much reduced compared to men until they go through menopause. Then it's the same. Now, why is that? Well, they're not bleeding anymore. Mm-hmm. And one of the clues that you can do for people to reduce their risk of fatal heart attacks is have them donate blood once a month. You need to bleed once a month. And when you do that as a woman, you reduce your fibrinogen levels, you reduce your clotting factors, your blood's a little thinner again, as your body has been accustomed to for the last 25, 30 years. Mm-hmm. So I'll pause there and let you get a question in. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I love your passion. And it just, I feel so much passion for what I do as well. And my life experiences are part of that too, just as yours. And so in my programs, I help my clients reduce toxic inflammation, and that is especially causing debilitating fatigue, like adrenal fatigue and brain fog and all of that. But I want to, like I said, I could go so many different places, but I want to bring it back to the gluten connection as a major cause of inflammation. I go into more detail in my programs in my gluten-free living section, where I'm using a lot of your fabulous work as a guide for my clients.
Right.
And that's where this interview will be in as well. And I've shared on the podcast before about our daughter's story. Now, it took us 3 years to get to the reason why she was having migraines and chronic headaches and skin conditions and all of that. And we discovered her gluten intolerance. And essentially, I would like you to give us a quick explanation of how gluten can affect anyone on a cellular level, and kind of a follow-up. Do you really need to test for gluten intolerance, celiac, or can you just avoid it? Because a lot of people have, I've had this conversation with a lot of women where they're like, I've avoided it. I know it's not good for me, but if I want to get tested, they make me eat 2 weeks of gluten. So
yeah,
I would like you to talk on that as well, too, if you don't mind.
Sure, of course, of course. Inside, Mrs. Patient, your digestive system is a tube. Starts at the mouth, goes to the other end. One big, long tube, 20, 25 feet long. When we swallow food, it goes into the stomach The stomach produces this really strong acid that can eat through the wood on this table. But the acid can sit in your stomach all day. It's normal for it to be there. That's okay. One of the reasons for that acid, there's two main reasons. One is to start breaking down proteins, but also the second one is to kill any bugs on the food. You have the same body as your ancestor thousands of years ago, the exact same digestive system, the same heart, the same lungs, the same liver, the same reproductive system. Everything's the same. And 10,000 years ago, agriculture began. Now that's a blip on the screen in human existence here, right? So before agriculture, our ancestors were nomads. They followed the herds. And so they're always looking for food. That was the number one concern, food. Number two was safety. So they look around, they find something. First thing they do, smell it. Then nibble at it. Then they eat it. If there were bugs on that food, it's the job of the acid in your stomach to kill those bugs. But if it doesn't kill the bugs, and this glob of food that we're eating goes from the stomach into the first part of the small intestine, you have sentries standing guard in the first part of the small intestine. I think of the soldiers at Buckingham Palace, those guys with the big hats, they're as stiff and dormant as can be, just standing there, but don't mess with those guys. You do not mess with those guys. The sentries standing guard in your gut, by the ones in our gut are called toll-like receptors. And toll-like receptor 4 is specifically looking for bugs in the food that we eat. That's all it does. It's looking for bacteria and parasites. When it sees a bug in the food, two things happen within 5 minutes. Two things. First, it increases the protein zonulin. Now, I'm sorry, I don't mean to get geeky, but that's what Fasano and his team identified in 1997. It's the protein zonulin that causes leaky gut. And so toll-like receptor sends the message and zonulin levels go up within 5 minutes. And now you've got leaky gut. Why? Because when you have a leaky gut, water from the body comes in, it leaks into the gut, and it washes out the bug with the poop. So the bug never has a chance. It's a beautiful defensive system we got. That's the first thing that toll-like receptor 4 does. The second thing it does, also within 5 minutes, is activate NF-kappa B, the major amplifier of inflammation in the body. What do I mean by that? It's the desk sergeant at the police station. You guys, you're in this neighborhood patrolling today. You guys, you're over here in this neighborhood. NF-kappa B calls the armed forces. All right, I need more cytokines. I need IL-1 beta over here. I need some tumor necrosis factor over here. Get rid of this bug. Get rid of this bug now. So toll-like receptor activates the desk sergeant, who then directs our immune system to fight this thing, this bug that's in our gut. It's this beautiful system we have that kept us alive. Those that did not have that kind of efficient response from toll-like receptors when they ate food with bugs on it, they died. They did not reproduce. Those that were efficient reproduced. We are their progeny. So all of us have these toll-like receptors working really well in us to protect us from bugs. We don't need them so much today, but all of us have it. It's a beautiful thing. Okay, that's the human body. That's how the body works. Fasano and his team showed us every human activates toll-like receptor 4 when they eat wheat, because our bodies can't digest wheat down into the small particles of protein that we need called amino acids. We humans cannot digest wheat. So the result is think of proteins like a pearl necklace, and the acid in your stomach undoes the clasp of the pearl necklace. Now you have a string of pearls.
Mm-hmm.
And our digestive enzymes act as scissors to snip, 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 snip the pearl necklace down to each pearl of the pearl necklace, which goes right through the walls of the intestine into the bloodstream. And then, and your bloodstream is just a highway. It's off on the highway. And now these amino acids go to make new bone cells or muscle cells or brain cells. That's the way our body works. But we can't break down the proteins of wheat into each pearl of the pearl necklace, the amino acids. No human can do that. So they break down into clumps of pearls of the pearl necklace. Now those clumps of pearls of the pearl necklace, so they're protein pieces, those clumps look like the outer shell of a bug. So every single time you eat wheat, you activate toll-like receptor 4, creating leaky gut and activating the desk sergeant to mobilize the armed forces trying to protect you from what it's identified as the outer shell, the outer bacteria, the outer armor of a bug. Now, Maureen Leonard is a famous gastroenterologist at Harvard. And in 2017, she did a literature review of over 60 studies on this topic that I've just explained to you. And she found her quote was, gluten activates toll-like receptor 4 in all humans who consume it. All was the underlying word. Not some, not once in a while, all. So, and there is one more study I'd like to show you because it's jaw-dropping. Let me see if I can bring it up here. I'm pretty sure I can. As on this topic about wheat and gluten. Yeah, here it is. Good. Good. So there is a one of the men I interviewed for the inflammation equation, which is at theinflammationequation.com, is Professor Yehuda Schoenfeld. Professor Schoenfeld is the godfather of autoimmunity. He's got over 3,000 research papers published, something like 55 medical textbooks, hosts the Autoimmunity Congress every year in a different part of the world. And there's always 1,000 or more doctors that come from all over the world to hear the best in autoimmunity. He is the godfather. And he published a paper that I want to show you here. So let me see for that button to share screen again. There it is. Okay, and let me see, where is the, okay, it's not there. So I'm going to share here, and now you see my whole screen. And let's see if I can bring up, there it is. This, do you see the study now?
Yes.
Okay, look at the title of the study. The gluten-free diet can ameliorate the symptoms of non-celiac autoimmune diseases. And he tells us that despite the many nutritional values of gluten-containing grains, gluten itself is not essential in the diet, and its biological value is not high. They looked at 83 articles on this topic of autoimmune diseases, and they found that 65% of the patients with autoimmune disease get better on a gluten-free diet, and this was confirmed in 79% of the studies. So it's not every person every time. And it's from 9 months old to 69 years old. And the autoimmune diseases that responded the best were psoriasis, thyroid disease, inflammatory bowel diseases. And here is the drawing they did. Now, nobody can read that, so I put here what each of these are. That's Addison's. That's autoimmune disease of the adrenal glands, and there's the pancreas, and there's the liver, and there's the thyroid, and there's the heart. And I'm just going to accelerate this. These are all of the autoimmune diseases that may get better on a gluten-free diet without celiac disease. So when you see the godfather of autoimmunity saying, 79% of the studies say that 65% of the people get better from their autoimmune disease on a gluten-free diet, who are you not going to check to see if they have a sensitivity to wheat? Who are you not going to check? That's the question that I often ask doctors when I show them these studies. Who are you not going to check? You just want to check them all, because just to make sure. And then the goal is always to do the right test.
Right, exactly. And, I'm just going to give myself as an experience here, just for our listeners. So I went pretty much gluten-free, right? Pretty much gluten-free. And the only gluten that I was eating was from the Ezekiel bread, which is sprouted grains, which is a whole other conversation. But the sprouted grains was better, because when we took our daughter off gluten 21 years ago, there was nothing. Like, I had to bake from scratch. I had to, there was very, very little that I could get from Whole Foods that was gluten-free,
right,
that an 8-year-old would want to eat. So right. I did everything from scratch, which is why, when they came out with the easier way to bake gluten-free, like, it's a win. Like, everybody can do this now.
Yeah.
So, but I was my own test subject, and something still wasn't right. Now, I have 2 autoimmune conditions, and I have had those for maybe 10 years now, and I have not gotten any more. I believe the reason why is because after a year of just eating sprouted grains occasionally, something still wasn't right. And I knew that. And that's, again, why you and I both educate on listen to your own body, find out what your body needs, not what Aunt Sally and everybody else. You've got to do the work to find out what your body needs. Once I fully went gluten-free, all those other little nagging symptoms went away.
Exactly.
And I truly believe that is why, along with my nutrition and my lifestyle and just how I live, is why I have not developed more autoimmune. Because what are we up to now, Dr. Tom? Over 100 autoimmune conditions right now?
Yeah, and every autoimmune disease is going up 4 to 9% a year, every year. Yeah,
insane.
Yeah, and you can't be a little pregnant.
Right.
You can't have a little wheat. You can't. And by the way, I just need to comment here and say all of your autoimmune diseases should be in remission. And if you still have elevated antibodies in an autoimmune condition, you're missing something.
Yeah.
And so I don't want people to go away thinking it's okay to have an autoimmune disease and not feel too bad. It's not okay.
Right.
Because
exactly.
The primary goal is extending the healthy lifespan, so it's closer to the total lifespan. And that doesn't happen when you've got elevated antibodies to your own tissue, killing off tissue. By definition, killing off tissue, killing off tissue, killing off tissue. By definition. That's why they're elevated. You're killing off more cells than you're making.
Yeah.
And so,
And that's so true. And I literally just got lab work from myself and my husband, and I was like, okay, what are we missing? Something's not right,
Good,
so
good.
You're right. I mean, we have to keep digging. We have to there's no easy button. There is no
Correct.
easy button for longevity and for, feeling good and being good and having optimal health. You have to do the work.
Yeah.
It's okay to be curious, but if you're not serious about doing the work, think about, where do you want to be in 5 years?
Yeah.
Where do you want your health to be? Where do you want your energy to be? Are you looking forward to grandchildren like I am? Like, I want to be able to play with my grandkids. I want to be able to be on the floor and have, be able to run with them in the backyard and go hiking. And, what is your what do you
What's your
want out of
vision?
your life?
What's your
What is
vision?
your
Right.
vision? What is your vision? It's so, so important. So
My vision is that I want to shake it up on the dance floor at my son's wedding. Now, my son is 3, right? So I've got about 25 years here that I got to wait, and I'm 72. So that means that there's going, I need to keep my healthy lifespan really close to the total lifespan.
well, you're doing a phenomenal job for sure. And I've just been so grateful for all the information that you pour into us. But like I tell my clients, information without implementation,
Yeah.
it's just information.
Right.
So take
Just
what
re-roll
you
up
learn.
yourselves. Right.
Right. So, and that's where they're actually being able to move the needle as they are working with a practitioner. So,
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful. We could talk for another hour, but I will not do that to you. So, I really appreciate you taking so much time with us, Dr. Tom. This has been really powerful, really informative, really powerful. Would you leave our listeners with a little bit of encouragement, a treasured truth?
A treasured truth.
Treasured truth.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm going to pull up one more slide for you. Let me bring it up here, and because it really gives the message of what's required. So now let's go back to share screen again. And let me see if I can bring that up here. And we'll do this one and share screen. And let's bring it here. And this is the one that I want to say to you, is that we have to think outside the box. If you want a different result, you have to think differently. And that's what's needed to extend the healthy lifespan closer to your total lifespan. And the way you do that is by remembering it's base hits that win the ball game. It's all of the little things you do that turn the direction of your health accumulatively. There's no magic pill, no magic button. You've got to realign your thinking. Base hits win the ball game. Do the little things. Get glass storage containers. Get houseplants. NASA did the study on houseplants that showed they absorb 74% of the toxins in the air. NASA published.
That was a great study. Yeah.
Yes. So you go to my website, thedr.com/plant, and you download the handout on plants. And you say, oh, I've seen those before. Go get them. And 2 6-inch houseplants in a 10 by 10 room absorbs over 74% of the toxins in the air. So you get, little houseplants. They're not expensive. And you say, oh, I don't have a green thumb. They're going to die. Then you're going to buy more because you're filtering the air for your children. That's what you want to think about, is all the little things you can do that will move. Think less thought. Think of a snowball going downhill in a cartoon. As it's coming down the hill, it gets bigger and it's going faster. It gets bigger and going faster. That's your health right now. When you do the Neural Zoomer Plus brain test and you see, oh my God, look at all the inflammation in my brain. It's like, whoa, that snowball is really going downhill. And there's no way to do this. There's no way. There's no pill. There's never been a pill for that. The best that you can do is taper and then start rolling back uphill. That's the goal. And it takes a wise person to embrace that, because we've all been raised with the idea of, I want it now. I want to feel better today. So base hits win the ball game, baby steps. It's finding out how you got to where you are, by which you and your healthcare practitioner can figure out what it's going to take to get you well.
I love that. That was a beautiful example. Absolutely. It's so doable, right? It is so doable. You just, I dive into mindset because mindset is a big part of it too, right? Because we got to change our mindset about this. We can't. There is no easy button. We've got to change our mindset and be ready to do the work and then reap the rewards, because your body is waiting for you to start treating it, you know, like a temple, is like I say. And so thank you so much, Dr. Tom, for coming on the show. It has been such a pleasure to talk with you and share you with my listeners. And I will be linking your contact information in the description, in the show notes, and the docuseries. So it has been a true honor and so much fun. Thank you.
Thank you so much.